Hello, everyone. This is Ankur Gupta again from MetaScale. I am responsible for sales and marketing in MetaScale. And I have my partner here, Justin Sheppard, who is head of operations for MetaScale. So thank you all for joining our webinar today. We're really excited to share our story on single point of truth using Hadoop as a data hub to manage ETL. The agenda today is we want to take you through our journey give you a quick overview of what we have done in MetaScale and how we have started using Hadoop to solve various problems on our side. And because it's a quick, short discussion, short webinar of 30 minutes, we'll be touching a lot of things. So in the end, we'll give you a few minutes to ask questions. But if we are unable to, if we run out of time and if your questions are not answered, please, our contact information will be given at the end. So please send us a note, and we'll be happy to have more in-depth discussions with you all. All right. So with that, I'll start. So MetaScale is, as some of you may already know, is a wholly owned subsidiary of Sears Holdings Corporation, the company that owns Sears, Kmart, top brands like Kenmore, Craftsman, Lens End, and such. And we are owned by the holding company. Sears started its big data journey about 4 years ago. And as you can see on the slide, where were we when we started? These are some of the issues we were facing. Our production schedules were out of control. We had multiple copies of data, but not a single point of truth. And I'm sure many of you will identify with this as you have the same data, the underlying data may be the same, but when you actually are producing reports, the results may be different depending on whether you're talking to sometimes sales guy or marketing guy or somebody else or a finance person. Our ETL complexity, I'm sure all of you identify with that. Our mainframe workloads were growing significantly. So our MIPS usage were growing significantly, and all because of that, our licensing costs and mainframe costs were growing up. And the last and the most important one, our IT budgets were not growing, but IT problems were growing. Our data volume and other IT issues were growing. And I'm sure pretty much everybody on this call will identify with that. However, our journey with Hadoop started with a storage problem. Our pricing team came to us to ask for an extra 10 terabyte of storage to run one of the pricing jobs. And when we looked at existing systems, we had Teradata, Netezza, Mainframe, pretty much typical data warehouse systems that you see. It was really, when we looked at the storage option in that, the additional cost for that storage actually outweighed the benefit of that pricing initiative. So we started looking at Hadoop as an open source data storage solution. And from there, in the last 4 years, we have come a long way. I can safely say that Sears is one of the first enterprises who started using Hadoop in an enterprise version. And at that time, we had to learn and build everything bottom up. So over 4 years, we have built a ton of resources, technologies, and obviously learning that we use in the form of MetaScale as a company to help other companies accelerate their big data journey. So let's look into a couple of other slides just to level set on what is Hadoop. As some of you may be well versed in Hadoop and its technology, but as I said, just to level set to make sure that everybody understands the basic, I'll touch base on it at a very high level, but I'm hoping that you guys have exposure and understanding on this technology. So as you all know, Hadoop is an open platform. In 2004, Google originally produced a paper on using MapReduce, and in 2008, folks from Yahoo actually created Hadoop as an open source platform to manage primarily big data. It's highly scalable, very fault tolerant. I mean, it uses commodity hardware system to store data. And the two main part of Hadoop, as you may know, are Hadoop distributed file system, which is the file sharing system to protect data across physical server, and the MapReduce, the actual job that parses data out to different systems and be able to run the job and accumulate results. Its system is highly flexible, scalable, and very low cost. The next slide shows what Hadoop is and what it is not. And it's important to understand that there are things that Hadoop can do, and then there are things that Hadoop cannot do as yet. There is a lot of development happening as we speak, and we expect a lot more growth in this area. But today, what Hadoop is, it can store a vast amount of data at a very, very economical price. It can run queries on huge data sets. So to give you an example, on our side, with 10% of pricing data, when we ran on our traditional system, it took us over a week to run that kind of data on, I think it was multi-billion line of code on our side. However, when we started doing it on Hadoop, we are able to run 100% of data, 100% of the data on the same multi-billion line of code, now do it multiple times of a day. So it's a very, very powerful system that allows you to ask questions that were previously impossible. Your previous enterprise data warehouse were not capable of, sometimes running those jobs and even allow you to manage that kind of data. It massively reduces data latency. The data latency, as we define it, from the moment data is created to when it can be used. And Hadoop reduces that significantly. So you can use the data as you are creating it. So basically, in the runtime, you are analyzing that data while archiving it. If you think about it, it's a very, very powerful concept. What it is not, it's not a high-speed SQL database, as many of you think. So when you need a real-time result on a shorter database, you would want to use your other traditional data warehouse system. So other points as you can read, you will need to build internal resources and educate your DBAs and other technology resources to get on Hadoop. While it is open source, it's fairly complex to build and manage. And that's why initially when we did it, it took us a long time to learn and build things in-house. But now, and that's why we formed MetaScale, to actually help other companies accelerate their big data journey, accelerate their learning and the usage of Hadoop. So next two slides really show that, you use right tool for the right job, right? You don't use a fancy car to move goods. You use it to go to maybe parties and whatnot. So it's our way of showing, using Hadoop as opposed to traditional enterprise data warehouses. So when it is, excuse me, when it comes to transactional high-speed analytics and interacting reporting where the runtime or the response time is less than a second, obviously you'll use your typical day-to-day enterprise data warehouse system. But if you're looking for a very affordable storage system to, run queries on a very large amount of data and complex data set, you would want to use something like Hadoop. In the next slide, we have kind of outlined query time against the data size, right? So if the queries are, as your data grows in volume from gigabyte to terabyte to petabytes, at that time we say you start using Hadoop. But when your data is under gigabytes and your response time required is in milliseconds, Hadoop may not be the best system for you. So it's really important to understand when to use or not use Hadoop. With this hopefully will provide you some high-level overview of what Hadoop is. What I would do is I'll invite Justin Sheppard, our head of operations, to take you through the concept of Hadoop as a data hub, and then take you through some of the use cases we have had and used Hadoop for. So, Justin?
Sure. Thanks, Ankur. So you'll see on the next slide, one of the things we wanted to show you is something, sort of our view of how Hadoop can be deployed in the enterprise and drive value and address some of the pain points that Ankur mentioned in the first slide. And we really see Hadoop as an integral part of the BI and the data landscape for large enterprises for the reasons we mentioned. Its scalability, the economics, the low cost of adding data, such that certainly Hadoop is not going to be a replacement for everything and anything in your BI landscape, but it is going to be a key part of that landscape. And again, it's about using Hadoop for the strengths it has, for the capabilities it has, and to pair it up with the rest of your BI landscape to reduce latency and increase value. So what you see here is sort of our view of Hadoop as a data hub. At its core, it's really about being able to store the single point of truth, the record, the master record for all the data in your enterprise in one place. And Hadoop really serves as an ideal technology platform to do that. For one, we kind of refer to it as the intelligent archive. So it's one place we don't have to throw anything away anymore due to the economics of Hadoop. We can keep everything and throw nothing away. And then we can also use it as a central point of sourcing data. So what you see here is really, as we look at our source systems and our sources of data, is what we strive to do is land all of that in Hadoop, and we try to capture it in its most granular form. And so we create what we see as a set of layers within Hadoop, caching it both at its most granular form, and then doing any transformations that are needed for eventual consumption within Hadoop. Therefore, we're not moving data around all over the enterprise, increasing that latency. You've got a single source of truth that sits in Hadoop as your data hub. And so here you'll see, sort of moving from bottom to top, you've got your systems of record, your sources of data. You apply data governance, so obviously applying proper stewardship to that data within Hadoop is key, and creating common definitions for the organization. I know one of the things we struggle with early on is different definitions of the same data types in the same data fields. And we use this exercise to really establish Hadoop as a place where we standardized on our data terminology and our standards and our profiling, and that also increased our efficiency and the value we're driving out of as Hadoop as a data hub. And from there, then you're ready to feed it to whatever consumption layers you have. So you may have analytics tools that sit right on top of Hadoop. You may run queries and MapReduce jobs straight off the platform, or you may move data to other analytics platforms for different types of processing that may suit these other analytic platforms or your different businesses in a better way. But it all comes back down to putting Hadoop at the center, wrapping governance around that, putting process around it, and by making Hadoop the data hub and then integrating it with your various ancillary warehouses and consumption layers, you can create a whole new sort of scalable enterprise data environment that can solve a lot of the typical challenges we face. So what we wanted to do was give you some use case examples. So these are examples we've implemented for Sears and are implementing for our customers. And so these are examples of the ways we've leveraged Hadoop as a data hub to achieve some of that value. And I guess what's interesting about some of these is that they're very pragmatic, practical ways to drive quick value. And certainly Hadoop has a lot of potential as a platform for social media, gathering of unstructured data, doing sentiment analysis. But what we found as a large enterprise, we have basic practical challenges such as managing batch workloads, managing mainframe workloads, and by having Hadoop at the center of our data infrastructure and using it as a platform for such, we're able to drive a lot more sort of what I'd say are pragmatic uses and driving a lot of value and savings from the platform. So one way we've done that, and we've pioneered the use of this, is through mainframe migration. So an example is here, you may have, if you're a mainframe user, you'll have a typical work stream. You may have online and batch steps in your mainframe process interacting with various sources. And that's sort of the top row you see here on this slide. And what we had done is we actually identified some of the bottlenecks in the process. So in this example, let's say step 4 and step 5 represent batch processing with a lot of overhead. So it's taking an inordinate amount of time to complete those steps, or it's consuming an inordinate amount of MIPS in your mainframe systems. So what we've done and what we do and what we help our customers do is actually basically take those steps out of the equation. So you may have your mainframe process that'll carry you all the way up to step 3, and then we have a methodology and a process for helping companies migrate that data, identify the processing that needs to happen, migrate that data to Hadoop, perform that processing, perform those steps in Hadoop, leveraging the scale and the parallel processing you have there, complete those steps, and then migrate it right back into the mainframe work stream. And one of the reasons we did this as opposed to tackling the whole work stream is really about change management and risk. For one thing, if you take it piece by piece, you can mitigate any risks involved associated with moving the other processing steps out of your mainframe workflow. So a big piece of this is it's a risk-conscious way to begin to address the immediate pain points you have. And so as an example, we have from some of our Sears use cases is, we had these steps 4 and 5s were routinely taking us in the matter of hours and days to complete. And even with the time it took to FTP that data to Hadoop and back, which was naturally some of the overhead associated with moving these workloads to Hadoop, we were still able to save time on a factor of 10 in completing these workloads. So enormous cycle time improvements, and then over time, we look to migrate other steps where it makes sense, and where you can see a gain from using the processing power of Hadoop. So that's just one example that we've used internally, and now I'm going to show you another example, and this also pertains to using Hadoop as a data hub. Is that we sort of took ETL, and with Hadoop, we flipped that around to what we call ELT to the X power, if you will. And all that means is instead of doing various ETLs throughout the organization, which was really our prior state, is where we were at, is that by sourcing data in Hadoop from the very beginning and landing it in Hadoop and keeping it at its most granular form, we then subsequently do all our transformations within Hadoop. So we extract, the way we look at it is, in a sense, we extract and load once to Hadoop, and then we do all transformations in Hadoop, and we do as many transformations are needed for the consuming system or the analytics that are required. But that, again, allows us to keep everything contained within the data hub, organized and in one place. An example we have here that's mentioned on this slide is that we were working on an application deployment for marketing, and we were heavily reliant on DataStage for that ETL. And actually, I'll jump to the next slide here. It was very CPU intensive, and we were having major performance issues. And so I know this is a bit of an eye chart here, but basically, if you see the box in red on this slide, represented sort of our biggest pain point in the entire process. And so similar to the mainframe process, we basically carved out this portion of the processing and moved it to Hadoop, and performed the batch and the transformations in Hadoop for this step. And by doing that, again, we sidestepped in two senses. We sidestepped the extra cost it would have costed us to bring on additional licenses and systems to process this data in an effective SLA, and two, we were able to meet our time frames. And so I think we've had a lot of success in taking this sort of iterative approach to identifying the low-hanging fruit, identifying those batch processes that are causing the most pain, and moving that processing to Hadoop, where we keep it centralized, we keep that processing and that transformation in one central place. So just to take a step back then, at a broader scope, sort of our journey and sort of how we've come to use the platform and how we're helping other customers use this platform is, we started, I think like many companies probably have, we started, looking at moving legacy code where we could reduce legacy code and use a Ruby MapReduce. In the earliest days, we were using sort of a Ruby MapReduce approach. And there were challenges with that. The code was cryptic. It was more difficult to support. There was less resources available to work on that language. Next, we moved to Hive, and that was sort of the next step in our evolution. And Hive was very easy to use. But in our experience, we just didn't get the performance we were looking for from Hive. And in some cases, it was difficult to implement the business logic that we were seeking. So most recently, we've evolved to Pig, and we actually did quite a bit with Pig, and we've had a lot of success with that language, and found it easy to code. We've also had a lot of success in helping our teams sort of cross-train. So our existing mainframe developers have really taken to Pig and its procedural language sense to quickly adapt and become Pig developers. So from a resource perspective, we found Pig to be a lot more accessible for our teams. Just all in all, saying there is an evolution to this, and really that's why MetaScale exists, is we're coming from an enterprise that has walked this journey, that has implemented Hadoop and has learned many things in that journey. And so MetaScale is really a company that's focused on helping other enterprises like Sears, like yourself, to actually accelerate your learning. So our goal would actually be help you skip some of these early stages that we went through, where we made some mistakes or we went through a slower process, and really help you take your big data programs, your initiatives, and provide you with expertise, solutions to accelerate your ability and to move your big data programs faster. So then again, just to summarize here, the learnings, and this is from our experience of using enterprise for enterprise legacy workload, using Hadoop as a data hub can dramatically reduce your batch processing times. So wherever those sit within your organization, and you don't have to take it on in one whole piece. You can break it down, you can take an iterative approach, you can mitigate the risk to doing that kind of migration, and we can help you do that. From an implementation perspective, this has reduced our implementation time frames. We are able to meet SLAs, meet our deliverable time windows, and we're able to help customers do the same. And finally, the tools and the skills will come, and we're here to help you guys develop those as well. So we've got a team ready to help. We have training courses that we can offer that will help companies equip with the tools and skills they need to launch their big data efforts. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up and turn it over to Ankur. And actually, we're actually going to open it up, I believe, for questions from anyone. So I'm going to check here. If we have, it looks like we have some questions coming in, and we'll answer those. We'll take the next couple of minutes to answer those questions. And then obviously, you'll see our contact info here. Please feel free. If we don't answer your question, or if you want more information, please feel free to reach out to us. So we'll take a moment here and pull up these questions. Just bear with us.
Hey guys, the question we have here is, what are the typical savings we have seen from mainframe migration? And the process that Justin took you through from HDFS, moving from batch processing from mainframe to Hadoop, the typical savings. So the answer to that is, I mean, the typical MIPS cost we have seen is from anytime between, depending on the complexity, between $3,500 to $8,000 per MIPS. And we're pretty confident that by using Hadoop, you're able to mitigate 10 to 20% of your MIPS users at the least. So you can count, depending on how heavy you are a user of mainframe and MIPS, you can count on several thousands dollars, if not millions of dollars in savings pretty quickly. And as one of our offering is actually, we do due diligence for companies and provide them a quick overview, depending on after looking through their systems and whatnot, of what potential savings may look like. And we actually have put a very high-level, simple calculator on our website that you could use to kind of see what kind of savings you can get. But if it gives you an idea, I mean, about 4 weeks ago, we removed one whole mainframe from our grid. So you can imagine the savings from that. Let's see what else we have here.
Sure. We have a question here. When you bring master data to Hadoop from any RDBMS, how do you keep Hadoop data in sync? And then just a question about, do we use HBase or bring the entire data set every time? And I think this depends on the type of data. So I know, and what's interesting is, as I think one side note here is, what's interesting is the Hadoop ecosystem develops. We're actually moving more and more into real-time streaming, and beginning to use tools like Storm, and so for us, it would depend on some of the data. So one source of data for us at Sears is all of our store transactions and data coming over from the store, sales, inventory, and we have quite a bit of data coming over our enterprise service bus. That data is being picked up sort of sequentially, and we're looking at more and more technologies, and as Hadoop develops, it's moving away. It's really actually, I think, beginning to move away from pure batch processing to, with the releases with tools like Impala and the like, to real-time analytics, improving the ability to handle streaming data as opposed to sort of single loads and single dumps of data.
Okay. Here's a question on somebody wants to know about resource uses. So clearly Hadoop, I mean, there's a scarcity of resources as you start your Hadoop journey, and how we went about it. So for us, it has been a long journey. So we built resources in-house, and as I said in the beginning, there were not many enterprises who were using Hadoop at that time, and I mean, we still see a huge scarcity of resources. As MetaScale, what we run a Hadoop Center of Excellence with resources based in US and India. So we can provide, we do provide an onshore-offshore model for companies that require it, and dedicated resources who are well-versed, not only as a user of Hadoop technologies, but also as a provider of these technologies for other companies. So if you're interested in knowing more about that, please just send us a note. Contact information is listed here. Okay, how are we doing on time?
We're just about up.
Okay. Guys, we're just about up on time. I see a few more questions that may require longer time for us to answer. I request that you contact us on the information that's given on the website. Keep checking our website for upcoming information, and log on to www.metascale.com or call our 1-800 number or send us an email as contact@metascale.com. Once again, thank you so much for joining today. It's been a pleasure, and we have another webinar coming up in about 3 weeks, so more information on our website for further usage of Hadoop and technologies that we're using on our site. Thanks, everyone.